Thank you, Michael. And good evening, everyone, and or good afternoon for those who are on the other side of the world or other parts of the world. So my name is Ivone, or in Bahasa Indonesia is Ivone. Yeah, I have three first names: Francisca, Maria, Ivone. So yeah, you can call me Francisca or Maria or Ivone. But today I'm going to talk about the future of teaching um, English with technology. So I assume that everyone here is a technology enthusiast and those who are really, really good at technology. So I'm a bit nervous, but anyway, uh, let's take a look at my, oops, sorry. Yeah, I need to find my play button. So I'm from Universitas Negeri Malang. So Malang is in Indonesia. Those who do not know where Indonesia is, it's in between Australia and Asia. So this is where I'm located. I'm in Java now, East Java, very close to Bali. So if you know Bali, then this is Bali. I'm here. So again, good evening from Indonesia. Good evening from Malang. Now I'm going to uh, take you to a journey through the past and the present and the future. In my abstract, I shared a question that inspired my presentation today. So will language teachers be replaced by technology? And at that time, my answer was no. And today we'll find out whether I still have no as an answer. Okay, so to answer my question, I will take you to a journey of the past, the present, and the future. So this is going to be the past now. Right, so my past is face-to-face learning. And well, I learned a little bit about blended learning, but I did not have the chance to implement blended learning in the past. Right. My experience was practically and mostly face-to-face learning, and that is what I'm going to base my reflection on. Yeah. So this is the way I organized my work at that time in the form of pre, during, after. It was very easy. Things were very easy to me, right? Pre, I think about the materials that I'm going to use, media, activities, and technology and assessment. So at that, in the presentation, in the pre-teaching time, I spent a lot of time working with technology, preparing for things. So technology was a big part of my pre-teaching. What about during teaching? I also use lots of technology for lecturing, for showing my students videos or pictures or other visuals, and then for playing games with them or playing recordings and research with them. We created things and we review things as well. And obviously technology is also a huge part of my during teaching. For after teaching, we know that, well, we will deal with homework and I give feedback to my students and I also assess their work. And again, technology is a huge part of it because I use course management system and I also use, simple tools like Excel and a rubric generator called For All Rubrics. We are going to see the apps just a little bit later. Now, but I also remember the era as the bring your own device era. So at that time, I always brought a lot of things to university, to my classes, and my students also brought lots of things. We brought everything that we needed except for a projector, I would say. Yes, because in most rooms that we have, we already have LCD projectors. So this bring your own device situation brought some issues, raised some issues. The first one is policy, of course, because lots of teachers, they were reluctant of using technology in class, especially the devices that students brought to class by themselves, for fear that the students will misuse the devices. So some teachers even ask the students whenever they come to class to put the devices on the teacher's table. So we have different policies depending on, well, schools or depending on the teachers themselves. And we also have problems with access. When we're talking about, especially about Indonesia, digital device is a big thing because not everyone has access to technology. So we also had problems with access. One student brought mobile phones, some others brought laptops and tablets, so different devices that at the end of the day, we had compatibility issues. So sometimes it doesn't work. It works in one device, but not in other devices. So not only across gadgets, but also across operating systems. So at the end of the day, many of us opted for this one simple uh, program, presentation software. It works every time. And this seems to be the approved kind of program. So whenever you have some sort of PowerPoint or presentation to bring to class, then you're okay because you basically integrate technology into language teaching. So I remember this era as, technology in this era as we use technology limitedly. And this was caused by lack of facility, especially in my condition, and also lack of technical support. So people just thought that, well, let's just use the simplest one so that we do not have to have technical problems at the end of the day. And most teachers use technology just to fulfill the standard requirements. So just need to tick that one box at that time. What happened was that because we use that type of technology, we sort of create this prescriptive learning. So we have one model and this model should work for everyone. For those who manage to use technology more than the others, they use technology as supplements. All right, now I want to invite you to participate in a survey about your past. All right, so I use this polling app almost every time I give presentation. So I invite you to go to www.menti.com and use the code 1983 98 and 9. And my first question is related to your roles when you were in face-to-face or blended learning era just before the current era. So for example, my role at that time, I was, because I lecture, so my role was a lecturer. I was a learning designer. I was tech, education technology curator. I was a motivator, cheerleader, a facilitator, or sometimes I was a counselor as well. So what was your role? So I hope that everyone can go to www.menti.com and use the code, or if you have cell phone nearby, you can just scan the QR code and go to the page. So I'm going to take you to the page now. So okay, what roles did you play as a teacher during the face-to-face and blended learning era? Oh, we had one. So I'm not going to reveal the answers just yet. I'm just going to wait for 20 more people to participate. So only one participates at the moment, 3. So we're going to reveal what your answers are. So this is an example of something that I normally use in class as well when I communicate with my students. I want to brainstorm things. So this is the type of technology that I use with them when I was in class. Okay, 9. Right. Facilitator, supporter, content provider, guide, lecturer, early adopter, partner, IT technician, coach, creator, grader. Oh, yes. Assessor. Yeah, grader, examiner, sage, on stage, a joker. Right. We are going to revisit this a little bit later. So now we see that this is what we have as a group, right? So a lot of us played the role of facilitator and supporter and guide, lecturer. So those are the major roles that we played. So I'm going to wait just a few more. 16. Yes, supporter gets bigger now. Facilitator and guide and supporter. And counselor as well. All right. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. Right, everyone contributed. Thank you so much. Yeah, so again, we can see that facilitator is big and then guide and supporter. Let me go back to my presentation. Now we are going to leave the past and then step to the present time, which is the remote learning era. So when I think about today and my condition of teaching, I come to think of remote learning again, using this framework. But I thought it doesn't seem to work anymore. How can I think about pre and during and after? Things are very different nowadays. So it's time for me to rethink about the potential of ICT and ELT, not in helping me prepare for pre and during and after classes, but I need to think about it in relation to synchronous and asynchronous learning. So when we think about synchronous learning, we have real-time instruction and collaboration, and then we also have delayed instruction and collaboration. But now I'm inviting you to take a look at the type of technology that we can use in both conditions, in both modes. Here we have video conference, text or voice chat, collaboration apps, course management system, and many others. But on this side, in the delayed instruction, we also have similar type of device. So basically, we can use any type of technology for any synchronous and asynchronous activities. And when I think about the things that I usually do when I teach face-to-face, then these are the type of activities that I usually do with them. So sometimes I ask them to listen to my lecture, we watch videos, we do projects, we do gallery walk, discuss, we do storytelling, role play, and doing exercises and other things. And fitting these type of activities into two, I think that it's quite possible. I can actually do all of these as synchronous as well as asynchronous. However, when I want to talk to my students during a lecture, I want to converse with them, then I will probably do a synchronous type of learning rather than asynchronous. But if it's just something that I want to explain to them, then I will just record it and put it in the course management system. They can read it or watch it during the asynchronous time. So nowadays, I think my teaching is not as pre, while, and post anymore. I think about them in quite a different framework. So I'm thinking more of content, interaction, and outcome. So I'm talking about this in light of the use of technology in language teaching. So when I need to think about all of the three to be able to create some sort of learning experience to my students, for my students. So for example, we are going to visit now, each of them one by one, and then I will give you some examples of what I do. So for content, I'm looking for access. Technology is really, really good for providing us with access and personalized automated access to input, language learning input, and also give us the chance to customize input as well. So let me take you to one example of application that I used for the past 2 years. This is called X Reading. This is for us, we use this for reading classes, so extensive reading course as well as intensive reading courses. So this is an online library, great, of course, but it's quite affordable. And here I will take you to this page because it's easier to see what's in the app. So as we can see, students can choose books that they want to choose. And then they can also choose the levels that they want to work on. They can choose books with, like 20,000 words or just 2,000 words. So it's their choice. They can set their reading speed. They can read really slow or really fast. It depends on their condition at that time. And should they need additional mode of input or channel, then they can listen to the book being read to them. And when they finish reading and listening, then they can do a quiz, very simple one, and they will get feedback or score. So this type of technology provided the students with personalization and automation. And the potential of technology in doing this type of things is really, really big, actually. So personalized because they can do what they want at their own pace and then whenever they want. And then automation, it gives them some sort of feedback, which is automated. Yet, when I use this platform with my students, there are some strong points that I can see from the use of this type of apps. So it's easy and give us unlimited access with varied selection, of course. Students can monitor their own progress. They can choose what they like. The last one is actually a very important one, a very important results of research that I did with my class last semester. So at the end of the semester last year, I asked them, so what have you done with this platform? And then what was the results like? And they said that the platform helped me change my reading habit. And many of the students give that kind of impression. They said that instead of watching YouTube videos before sleep, now I read books. So very promising. However, there are also some drawbacks in this. Students reported that they reached goals but did not enjoy the process because they were actually quite isolated. So it's related to the third point here. There is a lack of interaction between them and other students. And some of them were frustrated for not passing quizzes. So the way it works is that if a student fail a quiz, they would contact me and then I will reset the quiz. And this one student, she said, she gave me messages like 3 times and she failed the same test 3 times. And at the end of the day, she said, well, I just don't want to read this book anymore because I'm upset, that sort of thing. And while using the platform, there were also cases of cheating and bypassing. All right, so that's an example from a reading class. Now I will give you another example of something that we use in our writing class. Here, one example is Grammarly app. So we encourage our students to put their composition here and see what the technology give as feedback. So as you can see, they will be given a score and areas in which they need to work on are highlighted here. They can basically take a look at what's wrong with it and then change it. Or if they don't like it, they just can trash it. Okay. The next one is Hemingway. So Grammarly helps students with grammatical accuracy, but this particular app helps students with style of writing. And it works similarly by giving our students feedback, personalized because it's about their own writing. And it also gives them a rate of readability level. So it means that this type of writing is easy for even grade 6 students. Now, the strong points of the 2 apps that we just see, they provide specific feedback, they facilitate noticing, because students know which part of their conversation is not good enough or needs revision. The apps give them suggestions for improvement and also assess their performance. However, again, students may reach their goal of improving the quality of their writing, but not necessarily that they learn from the process, because everything was so automated. You know, suggestions were given as a suggestion and students can just click it and fix it. So there's no process of the noticing process stops there. There will lack of interaction with other people, and some students bypass as well. Right. So when thinking about all of these apps, you know, the strong points and the weaknesses, we have many apps like this. If we visit Google App Store, for example, there are over 4 million apps these days. There are lots of this, so we have to be very, very selective. And this is another statistic about mobile education app download. As we can see here in the first quarter of last year, just when the pandemic hit us, the number raised dramatically. So we've been using it, and it's a big area of development there. And when it comes to internet use, we can be very happy because education and study related activities using the internet takes about 42.6% of all the use of the internet. So everything is there. So sorry, I should not do that. Okay. So as we can see that there are parts of technology which are really, really good, but it's not enough. Technology give us access, technology provide personalization because everyone can use it at their own pace and based on their own needs. And some parts of feedback and other things are automated, but the learning design the learning design is not actually there. So teachers should create the design of learning. Teachers should give additional support to compensate for the weaknesses of the technology. And what is more important is that there is no interaction in the technology itself. There is human-computer interaction, but it's not the kind of interaction that we want when our students learn language. So let's move to the second one of what I have in my framework here, interaction. So when I talk about interaction in remote learning, it's something very, very important because when we have interaction, then we can facilitate teacher, social, and cognitive presence. Because when you think about technology, it mediates interaction, but us teachers who decide what kind of interaction it's going to be. So this is a big concept in remote learning or online learning. You know, in face-to-face learning, it's not such a big concept because it's not a big issue. It's a good concept, but it's not a big issue because teachers are there. Students can see them, but nowadays they rarely see us, so they do not feel our presence. They can feel it only in the design of learning activities that we create for them and the facilitated discourse that we plan and also indirect instruction that they give them. They need to be connected to other people when they learn language, and that's why social presence is so important in remote learning. And in addition to that, they also need to be cognitively present. They need to actively construct meaning through discourse and reflection of what they do. And this is basically for the creation of community of inquiry and learning. So what if one of this is missing? So sorry, I keep going back and forth, sorry. So what happens if one of the presence is missing? So for example, teacher presence is not there. So learning will not be complete. If cognitive presence is not there, the students are not actively engaged in learning, then they will not learn. If they are not connected to other people, then they will be isolated. So it's very important that in remote learning, we think about interaction that can facilitate all of these presence. So once again, technology provides us with the tools, but teachers provide with the design and decide on what sort of action is going to happen during interaction with other people. And so now we've thought about the content and how technology is used and the interaction and how important it is. And now we come to the outcome of learning. So the outcome of learning can be personal, can also be collaborative, but we should make sure that it's relevant and meaningful to our students and lead to the creative type of outcome. Um, so technology is really, really good for this um, because it provides us with different type of tests, like flexible tests like adaptive tests or static tests. For static tests, it's automated, but it's uniform, one for all. And maybe overwhelming because think about it, one student can find two of these items difficult, but another student can find all of the items difficult. Yeah, so they can get quite frustrated because this test, it's not at their level. But when we have the option of doing adaptive tests with computer or technology, then it is automated but more personal. So it fits into the condition of the learner. So for example, one learner is given a question and uh, she failed, she will be given easy questions and then another easy question. And then she did it right. Oops, it's supposed to go that way. Yeah. So this guy can do the item and then go to a more difficult one and then fill this time and then go to a simple, easier one. Yeah, so it's more overwhelming in the sense that students will get questions that fit their level. So computers are really, really good at this. However, we come across problems of accountability. So with our students, when we do remote learning and we give tests to our students, we don't know who is actually doing the test. It can be their brother, sister, mother, tutor, neighbor, anyone can do the basically can do the test. So we cannot guarantee that they are actually doing the test. Practicality. This type of test is practical for us, but not for them probably, because they may be using a cell phone when they do the test to do the test, and the screen will be too small for them to even read the text, and see the visual clearly. We also come across from issues like reliability and validity, but most importantly, relevance. Because in class, when we teach students and treat language learning as tests, then it's okay to use tests. But if we use project-based learning and then task-based learning, but problem-based learning, test is not going to be the right kind of tools to uh, assess our students. Luckily, technology also provide us with something that we can use. So like this digital rubric. So this is a rubric that I often use. So I can create rubrics, uh, criteria, and then I can give points. And all I need to do is just click, 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 and it will generate, a score for my students and also a description of what they do. And then at the end of the day, we can add that with more comments, more personal comments related to their projects. We can also use a checklist or badges. For simple projects, we can do badges. This is also useful for younger learners. But most importantly, this type of technology can help us with teacher, peer, and self-assessment. So it makes our job, my job especially, um, make it easier and more automated. And this type of technology that supports personalization and automation should be part of our teacher toolbox. And they are part of my teacher toolbox. But is that enough? Is it enough to have all of these things in our toolbox handy for us to use later? I don't think it's enough because all aspects of learning experience need to be considered, not only the tools. However, the tools that I use or teachers use will affect learning experience. So for example, the first example that I give you, when we use mostly presentation software, then learning is going to be more teacher-centered. But when we are using collaborative apps, then we give more chance to a more student-centered learning. All right, so next, let's go to another question. So still the same menti.com. So I would invite you again to go to menti.com and use the code 1983 98 and 9, but with a different question now. Having experienced face-to-face and remote learning, and having listened to me talking about my own experience in both uh, modes of learning, which one do you prefer? Okay, so let's go to Mentimeter once again. So this is the results of our previous uh, poll. So now I'm going to take you to the second question. Having experienced face-to-face and remote learning, which one do you prefer today? So I'm quite excited. Okay, 15. So we have 24 in the room. Right, so 3 opted for face-to-face, 2 wants to stay in remote learning mode, and most of us actually prefer blended learning or partly online mode. This is interesting. We've been through blended learning before, right? But what kind of blended learning that we are looking for now that will fit us better in the new situation later? For me, it's going to be later. It's going to be my future because today I'm still doing the remote learning. All right, so I'm going to go back to my slide. So as we can see here, the pattern is like most of us would like to experience blended learning in the future. But what blended learning? That's the question. So we've been through the past and the present. In the future, to me, it looks like we need some sort of flexibility. So I label it as the flexible learning era, in which when we take a look at, let's take a look at this. So technology is going to be more, it's going to be faster and more efficient, right? But language learning, as we know, it won't change. I mean, human beings are human beings. We know that to learn a language takes time and takes some sort of balance. We cannot just read, we just to balance it with other things, other skills, because input alone is not enough. We need input, we need the chance to produce some sort of output, we need interaction, and we need to notice to be able to learn. So there are a lot of things happening. So we want to balance everything. We want to balance the skills that we learn, knowledge. We want to be able to speak like native speakers and many others. So how can we combine all of those things in the future? It's going to be a homework for us. But that's why I see we should see future learning with future English language learning with technology is supposed to be something more flexible. So we have experiences online learning and then face-to-face learning, right? One example of a flexible kind of learning is called concurrent classroom. So here in this model, we can do simultaneous kind of learning. So learners can be at home, some of them, some others can be on campus or at school, and they are doing learning simultaneously. So the job of the teacher is going to be very, very hard for this type of learning. But there's also another mode of learning model, a learning model that we can follow, which is hybrid flexible course. Yeah, this is another model. It's not about doing things simultaneously, but this time learners have the ability to select. the chance to select. So when they want to do online, then they do it online. And then when they want to do it in a face-to-face mode, then they do it in face-to-face mode. But basically, we have to provide them all with both options. So when it comes to think about the concept of flexibility in the future, we think about schedule, like what we have talked about, and then learning mode. But in addition to that, we also need to think about flexibility in content, because nowadays we have everything available for us, but we seem to use, pretty much the same type of thing all the time. We don't look for more variety in the content of our language teaching and learning. And the last one is actually learning pathways. So flexibility in learning pathways, so that learners have the chance to develop in areas in which they need to develop. But today, we only have the same pathway for everyone. So flexibility and learning pathways is going to be something that we need to look for. All right, so last question. So I'm going to invite you all again to go to Mentimeter and think about, as an English teacher, what roles will you play in the flexible learning era? So we talk about your role when you were in face-to-face era, but what about the roles that you will play later on in the flexible learning era? So still the same code. So I'm going to take you to Mentimeter. So this was your answers as facilitator, supporter, and guide. Some of you are still lecturers, and then counselors, coach, knowledge provider. Interesting. Okay, that's your answer for the face-to-face and remote learning. And now, as an English teacher, what roles will you play in the flexible learning era? Okay, 5. 6 have participated. Okay, now I'm going to try to refill your answers. We'll see whether everything is still the same. Choice giver, interesting. Mentor, tech support, IT support staff, facilitator, guide, empathic, available, creative, connector, facilitator, innovator, road builder, pathway. It's probably in relation to learning pathways. Course designer, coach, or companion on the learning journey, and provider of responsive feedback along the way. I really like that one. Liaison, connector, and guide. So it seems that from the answers, we will play different roles from before the pandemic, right? During the face-to-face learning. So these roles Although facilitators are still here, but supporter of interaction is now here, self-proclaimed technology guru. Right. So it says that we can see that we will play different roles, perhaps in addition to the roles that we have played in the past. All right, let me go back to my presentation now. So in the future, the way I see it, technology in ELT is going to be used more innovatively to support more personalization. We already have it supporting personalization and automation, but they will be maximized. And this is actually something that I'm looking forward to in the future, a more adaptive kind of learning. So it's not one for all, not one mode or one concept or one um, materials for all, but something to fit all learners. Because the resources are there, the technology is there for us to use. And so I'm looking forward to use teaching technology as my teaching partner as well as a tool. All right, now I'm going to answer my own question that I posed at the beginning of this presentation. So the way I see it, human beings are flexible beings. We adopt to changes, and language learning should also be flexible because of that, because our learners are human beings. They should be able to learn something that fit their needs. So language learning in a way should be more flexible, more able to adapt to different learning contexts, different learning needs, different students. So the answer to my own question is those who will survive the flexible learning will be those who are flexible enough to adapt to the changes of technology, and who will also try to make language learning more flexible. So I'm looking forward to uh, your opinion right after this. So thank you, everyone. I will stop sharing and let's give the floor back to Michael.
Applause, applause.
Thank you, Pak Willie. Yes, applause, applause, applause.
Applause.
Thank you very much, Ivone. That was so nice and soothing. I could just listen to you technology for hours.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Does anybody have
Thank you.
any burning question for our esteemed Indonesian professor here? If you do, just unmute yourself and ask away. We have a couple of minutes, or you can write your question in the chat box and we will get to it. I'll give you a minute to think about that. Maybe not a whole minute.
Yeah, Tom has a question.
Okay, Tom.
This is great as long as the student wants to learn. But one of the problems is that in many university classes, especially a required English class for engineers, they're just trying to fulfill a requirement so they can graduate. So they want to do the minimum. This is a problem, I think, that's worldwide. Any suggestions how to deal with it?
Well, that's a difficult issue because we know that, when it comes to motivation, they are different orientation. Students have different orientation. Some students have integrative orientation. So they want to learn language because they want to be integrated into the context of the English speaking people. They want to learn English because of that. They want to communicate and collaborate or be part of the community. But some others with only instrumental orientation, they will probably be thinking about just passing a course. Yeah.
Right.
So a practical answer to this is going to be quite difficult. Yeah. But I guess yeah.
That's why I typed in one of those boxes that enforcer is one of the things that a teacher has to do, because sometimes you actually do have to crack the whip to get them to do what's good for them. And even if it's not for them, their parents, the school expects them to make progress, and that's our responsibility. So, I mean, this is pretty old-fashioned, but I think it's still quite relevant.
Yes, definitely, Tom. Yeah. But honestly, I don't have the answer to your question. It's going to be very difficult. Yeah.
Okay. That was a difficult one to throw at you. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Perhaps really can help me answer that question.
No, I agree with Tom. That's
Oh,
an
Michael.
extremely difficult question.
Yeah.
Yeah. But seriously, going forward, I am looking forward to seeing more research into the nature of learning outside the classroom. I think for many years we've been looking at intramural learning that happens in the classroom. A lot of things we have learned from that line of research, but I am really hoping that we will be, sort of spending more time looking at what is out there. What do students actually do when they learn outside the classroom? Given, either minimal or a lot of motivation in the process of learning. And technology, I'm sure, comes in, very strongly, and will have a lot of influence on the way students acquire the language. So more research in that area, I would think is important.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's an area that we don't really know. Yeah, so far, right?
Yeah.
And thinking about what students actually do at home when they are in the context of remote learning is actually quite interesting, because a couple of days ago, I taught my students, in a synchronous learning mode. But because this is Indonesia, so we have to carefully select the type of technology that we can use due to, again, limited internet connection or unreliable internet connection, and then other resources. So I decided to use Google Classroom plus WhatsApp. Right. Some students are really active in communicating with me and other students within the WhatsApp group, but I only find some students participating. So out of curiosity, I texted one of the students that I know, and I asked him, and he said, well, at 7, we just confirm our attendance in Google Classroom and go back to sleep. So it's something very, very difficult to deal with. So even if we give them something interesting, from our point of view, not necessarily that it's going to be as interesting from their point of view.
I am rather fortunate in Singapore. My students are all on scholarship, so they have to come to class. If they don't come to class, it's like they're not going to work, actually. They're being absent from work. So So motivation is not an issue for me, and I find that really enjoyable, teaching students who are highly motivated. Tom, come to Singapore, and you will enjoy teaching my students, Tom. Tom, Rob.
Can I come too?
Oh yes, you do. Can.
Me too, Pak Willie.
Yes, you too, Michael.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, I'm in the fortunate position that working not for a university or a school, but for a place where students are using their own money to buy the credits to enter my classroom. When they are in my classroom, they are really focused and they are really there to work, because it's their money that is buying this time with me. And so there's a much more of a motivation to actually succeed. That, of course, does not take away from the fact that I have to then provide them with value for money. So that is then a quid pro quo. They are coming, they are showing up because they are motivated, but I have to then provide them with stuff that they are really going to feel, yeah, that was valuable. That was a good way to spend X amount of my money.
Yes, you're very lucky, Leonie. Yes, Michael.
Oh, wait, someone has a question.
Yeah, there are two Michaels here.
Go ahead.
Also, just to kind of expand on what Thomas mentioned, I've also got myself and Michael Free on similar situations. We co-workers, and a lot of the students also that we teach, like Thomas, are not very motivated. You know, they're there just to get the credits and do the bare minimum. And what I found in a face-to-face class, this is why I probably prefer the blended learning when you're using online tools in a face-to-face class setting, is because there seems to be this on a remote learning, there seems to be this je ne sais quoi, where students can find it more easier to hide behind a screen and not participate. Their cameras are on. But in a face-to-face class setting, there's that social pressure that I'm not going to sit here and be awkward in front of other students. I have to talk, otherwise I'm a weirdo, kind of thing.
Yes.
I found very interesting. It would be very nice to see some more studies on that. I totally agree with Willie there. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. One of our new additions to my university, and a fine looking young man he is. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so